Welcome to our deep dive,
Yeah.
on Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be kind of charting the story of Lily Bloom
Yeah.
and, going from like her difficult past and then how that kind of bleeds into her present.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how the story unfolds because it kind of jumps between her present life and her teenage years
Yeah.
through these diary entries that she writes to Ellen
Oh,
DeGeneres.
that's right.
Yeah.
I like how it's like two stories almost running at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's start with Lily's present. So we meet her in Boston,
Okay.
and she's kind of building a life for herself after leaving her hometown.
Yeah.
And a pretty difficult family situation.
Yeah. She's really determined to make something of herself
Yeah.
and create a life that's different from what she grew up with.
What can you tell us about her family and how it's impacted her?
Well, right away in the first chapter, we see her attending her father's funeral.
Okay.
And it becomes clear that, they had a complicated relationship.
Yeah.
He was abusive towards her mother. Right.
And she carries a lot of, the weight of those memories.
So right from the start, we see that, her idea of love and relationships
Yeah.
has really been shaped by some pretty negative experiences.
Definitely. And, that's kind of further emphasized through like the flashbacks to her teenage years.
Okay.
Those diary entries reveal her first love, Atlas.
Hmm.
He's this homeless boy that she finds like squatting in an abandoned house.
Oh, wow.
And he becomes like this source of comfort and support for her.
So Atlas represents an escape from her chaotic home life.
Exactly. Someone who really sees her and understands her pain.
Yeah.
And their bond is really strong, but eventually circumstances separate them.
Okay.
So now back in the present, Lily meets Ryle,
Okay.
this charming and successful neurosurgeon.
Ah, Ryle. He seems almost too good to be true.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely an instant attraction between them.
Yeah.
They have this great first date,
Okay.
but then he makes it clear that he's not interested in a relationship. That seems like a red flag right there
It is.
when someone says that.
Yeah, but she's drawn to him anyway.
Yeah.
And so they continue to see each other casually.
Mhm.
And despite his initial stance, their connection keeps deepening.
Okay, so we have this like push and pull dynamic forming.
Yeah.
Like she wants more, but he's hesitant.
Mm-hmm.
What happens next?
Well, they attend this fundraising gala together,
Okay.
and things get a bit heated because Ryle gets jealous seeing her interact with another man.
Ah, so the cracks are starting to show.
Yeah,
Jealousy can be a pretty destructive force.
it really can be. And, in this case, it leads to this shocking incident
Okay.
where he pushes her
Uh-oh.
in a moment of jealousy. She hits her head.
Oh, no.
And he's instantly filled with remorse.
That's disturbing.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't intentional, that's a sign
Yeah.
that he's got a pretty volatile nature.
Mm-hmm.
How does Lily react to that?
She's shaken and confused, but she also tries to downplay it.
Mm-hmm.
I think deep down she's afraid to really confront.
Yeah. The possibility that he could be dangerous.
It's like she's trying to convince herself that it was a one-time thing.
Exactly. And then to complicate matters even further, she runs into Atlas again.
Whoa! Talk about a blast from the past.
Right.
What's that like for her?
It's a really emotional experience.
Yeah.
All those feelings she had for him as a teenager come rushing back.
So now she's caught between two very different men.
Mm-hmm.
Ryle, who is passionate,
Yeah.
but potentially dangerous.
Right.
And then Atlas, who represents safety and a connection to her past.
Yeah, and it's right in the midst of all of this that Ryle finally admits his feelings for her and tells her he wants to be with her.
Well, that seems like a positive step.
It does.
Maybe he's ready to commit.
Yeah, he declares his love for her,
Okay.
but then he immediately follows it up by asking for like a 6-month trial period before they can become exclusive.
Wait, what? That's a pretty strange request.
I know, right? It's definitely unconventional.
Almost like he's testing her or something.
Yeah,
But despite her reservations, she agrees.
So their relationship continues, but under these like unusual conditions.
Yeah.
I'm guessing things don't go exactly smooth sailing from here.
You're right. The next chapter opens with Lily attending her friend Elisa's wedding.
Okay.
And it's a joyful occasion, but there's this underlying tension.
Yeah.
Because Ryle's still battling this jealousy.
Right.
And it kind of surfaces again at the wedding reception.
So even in a celebratory environment, like
Yeah.
insecurities are still bubbling up.
Exactly. He gets agitated when she dances with the groomsmen.
Oh boy.
And afterward, they have this heated argument.
It seems like this pattern is repeating itself.
Mm-hmm.
His jealousy flares up, they fight,
Right.
and then there's a period of calm before it starts all over again.
Yeah, and this time during the argument, he makes this shocking confession.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. What does he confess?
He reveals that as a child, he accidentally shot and killed his older brother.
Wow.
It's this deeply traumatic event that has haunted him ever since.
Yeah, that's a heavy revelation.
Yeah.
It certainly sheds some light on, you know, his anger
Yeah.
and his inability to handle conflict.
Mm-hmm.
But does it excuse his behavior towards Lily? That's a tough question.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
She's left reeling from this confession. She's trying to process the fact that the man she's falling for
Yeah.
is capable of this kind of violence.
Right.
Even if it was unintentional.
And all of this is happening while she's still dealing with the emotional baggage from her own childhood.
Exactly.
It's a lot to handle.
It is. And to make matters even more complicated, Ryle proposes to Lily.
Hold on. He proposes right after confessing to accidentally killing his brother.
He does.
That seems
Yeah.
impulsive, to say the least.
It does. And her reaction is like this mix of shock and hesitation.
I can only imagine. On the one hand, he's, declaring his love and commitment.
Right.
But on the other hand, there's all these red flags, like waving curiously.
Exactly. And that's where we'll leave it for now. She's faced with this monumental decision, and the stakes are incredibly high.
All right, we'll pick back up with that next time.
Okay.
So we left off with Ryle's proposal. Kind of an unexpected turn of events, given everything that had just happened. What's going through Lily's mind at this point?
I think she's just completely thrown. Part of her loves Ryle and wants to believe that they can have a future together.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's deeply troubled by his past and his tendency toward anger and jealousy.
It's like she's caught between her heart and her head, right?
Exactly.
Her heart wants to say yes,
Mm-hmm.
but her head's giving her all these warning signs.
Totally. And I think she also can't shake this feeling that his proposal is somehow connected to his confession about his brother.
Right?
Like he's trying to prove something.
Yeah, like overcompensate.
Yeah, maybe make amends for his past through this grand gesture.
Yeah, erase the darkness with a sudden burst of light. But does she ultimately say yes?
She does, but not without hesitation. She makes it clear that she needs time to process everything.
So it's not the fairy tale yes he might have been hoping for.
No, not exactly. And their engagement isn't without its challenges. Ryle continues to exhibit controlling behavior.
Right.
He becomes increasingly possessive and suspicious of her interactions with other men, especially Atlas.
It seems like his insecurities are really driving a wedge between them.
Yeah, they really are. And then things escalate even further when she finds an old photo of Atlas among her father's belongings.
Oh, wow.
And it triggers all these emotions, and she ends up reaching out to Atlas for the first time in years.
Wow, so their paths cross again? What's Ryle's reaction to that?
Oh, he is furious.
Yeah.
He sees Atlas as a threat and accuses Lily of betraying him.
Right.
His jealousy and anger just spirals out of control, and it leads to this terrifying incident.
This sounds like a major turning point in their relationship.
It is. During an argument, he loses his temper and pushes her down the stairs. She's seriously injured and ends up in the hospital.
That's awful.
Yeah.
It's like the ultimate manifestation of his rage.
Yeah.
His inability to control his emotions.
It really is. And I think in that moment, she realizes that she can no longer deny the danger she's in.
Right.
She sees the parallels between Ryle's abuse and the abuse she witnessed her father inflict on her mother.
So the cycle of violence she's been trying so hard to escape is now playing out in her own life.
Exactly. And while she's recovering in the hospital, she makes a decision.
Okay.
She chooses to leave Ryle.
Wow.
She recognizes that staying with him would put her own life and the life of her unborn child at risk.
So she's finally putting her own safety and well-being first.
Yeah.
It's a heartbreaking but incredibly brave choice.
It really is. And it's not an easy path.
Right.
Ryle begs her to reconsider, promises to change, but she knows she can't risk it.
She's breaking free from that cycle.
Yeah.
Choosing a different future for herself and her child.
It's incredibly powerful. And there's another powerful element that comes into play around this time. Lily discovers that she's pregnant.
Oh, wow. So she's navigating this incredibly difficult decision while carrying his child. That adds another layer of complexity to this.
Absolutely. It forces her to confront a whole new set of emotions and questions.
Yeah, like what kind of relationship, if any, will she have with Ryle after the baby's born?
Exactly. How will she explain the situation to her child?
Right.
And most importantly, how will she protect her child from the potential harm that Ryle represents?
Those are some incredibly heavy burdens to carry.
Yeah.
How does she handle all of this?
She finds strength in unexpected places.
Yeah.
Her friends really rally around her, offering support and encouragement.
That's good.
And she begins to see her pregnancy as a source of hope, a chance to create a new beginning for herself and her child.
So amidst all the darkness, there's a glimmer of light emerging.
Yes. And she also makes a conscious decision to forgive Ryle, not for his sake, but for her own.
Right.
She realizes that holding on to the anger and resentment will only poison her own life
Yeah.
and her ability to move forward.
Forgiveness is a powerful theme that runs throughout the book, isn't it?
It really is. She grapples with forgiving her father for the abuse he inflicted on her mother.
Right.
And then she eventually extends that same forgiveness to Ryle.
Yeah.
It's not about condoning their actions,
Right.
but about releasing herself from the grip of their past.
It's about finding peace and moving on.
Yeah,
Creating a healthier space for herself and her child.
exactly. And as the story progresses, she focuses on building a life for herself and her daughter. She pours her energy into her work.
Okay.
She opens a flower shop.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, and she leans on the support of her friends.
Good.
And she even reconnects with Atlas, who's now a successful chef and restaurant owner.
It sounds like she's finally starting to find some stability and happiness.
She is.
Yeah.
But her journey isn't without its challenges. Ryle, despite their separation, still wants to be involved in his daughter's life.
So there's still that lingering presence of their past, that reminder of the trauma she's endured.
Yes, and Lily has to navigate that very carefully,
Right.
Setting boundaries and prioritizing her daughter's safety above all else.
It's a constant balancing act, isn't it?
It is. Trying to protect her child while also acknowledging Ryle's role as the father.
Yeah.
And she does so with remarkable strength and grace. She refuses to let his behavior define her or dictate her future.
It's inspiring to see her resilience, her ability to rise above the challenges and create a life filled with love and hope.
It really is. And in the final chapters of the book, we see Lily finding happiness and fulfillment in both her personal and professional life. Her daughter Emerson is thriving, and she's built a successful business that brings her joy.
So there's a sense of closure, a feeling that she's finally broken free from the shadows of her past.
Yes. And there's even a hint of a potential future with Atlas,
Who has remained this steadfast presence in her life.
It sounds like she's finally found the peace and love she deserves.
Yeah.
A beautiful and hopeful ending to a story that's been filled with so much pain and struggle.
It is. And it leaves the reader with this powerful message that even in the face of adversity, it's possible to find healing, forgiveness, and ultimately a love that's both passionate and safe.
Yeah, it really is a powerful story. And you've guided us through Lily's journey so well. Before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned earlier, forgiveness.
Yeah.
It just seems like such a central theme, and it ends with us.
Absolutely. It's woven throughout the whole narrative, It influences so many of her choices and ultimately shapes her path toward healing.
It's interesting because forgiveness is often presented as this simple act, but in the book, it's portrayed as this really complex process.
Exactly. Lily grapples with forgiving her father for years.
She carries the weight of his abuse and the pain it inflicted on her family, and then she's confronted with the challenge of forgiving Ryle.
And those are two very different types of forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
Forgiving a parent versus forgiving a romantic partner.
That's a really great point. With her father, it's more about coming to terms with the past, accepting that he was flawed and incapable of change.
Yeah.
But with Ryle, it's more about releasing herself from the anger and resentment that are holding her back from moving on.
It's almost like she realizes that forgiveness isn't about condoning their actions, but about freeing herself from the burden of their past.
Precisely. And it's not a decision she makes lightly either.
Of course.
She struggles with it, she questions it, and ultimately arrives at forgiveness as a way to reclaim her own power and agency.
And by doing that, she creates space for healing and for new possibilities in her life.
Exactly. And that's such a powerful message for readers, I think. Forgiveness, even in the most difficult circumstances, can be a catalyst for growth and transformation.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we don't have to be defined by the hurts of the past. We can choose to let go, to forgive, and to create a future that's full of hope and possibility.
Beautifully said. And I think that's one of the things that makes It Ends With Us such a resonant and impactful story. It doesn't shy away from difficult themes,
Yeah.
but it ultimately offers a message of resilience, hope, and the transformative power of love.
Well, this has been such a rich and insightful conversation.
It has.
Thank you for taking us on this deep dive into It Ends With Us. I know our listeners will be eager to pick up the book themselves and explore its themes more deeply.
It's been my pleasure. I always enjoy diving into stories that spark meaningful conversations and encourage us to reflect on our own lives
Absolutely.
and relationships.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.